the government of Canada has created the Made in Canada open banking system where they will introduce a digital ID
and apply incentives, policy-driven framework, and apply incentives.
Disrupt America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. So there's some interesting news to highlight here in Canada, and this is something that has been, talked about for quite some time now, and I think the conversation does need to be there. I'm talking about UBI, Universal Basic Income, which at a point where we're seeing a lot more, modernization, a lot more AI and robotics and automation to certain industries. I think that's important to have at least a conversation on how society is going to support itself, how working class people are going to support themselves when robots do take over the job, because that's not a hyperbole. That's not a hyperbole. That's not science fiction. That's happening right now. That automation, AI is going to completely radicalize the working class. It's going to completely take over so many industries that's going to leave people in the dark. So obviously UBI is this important conversation, and it brings to attention to the government of Canada, where the government of Canada is proposing an $1,800 universal basic income pilot project by 2026. Who qualifies and what you'll get. So, starting in 2026, the Canadian government will begin a highly anticipated universal basic income pilot project, offering direct monthly payments to selected individuals. The Canada Universal Basic Income Pilot 2026 aims to explore the real-world impact of a guaranteed income on financial security, employment patterns, and overall quality of life. This bold initiative will test how universal income can complement or potentially replace existing social assistance programs, especially as automation, inflation, and precarious work continue to reshape the economy. So, who is eligible for the UBI in Canada? Eligibility for Canada UBI Pilot 2026 will be determined based on income level, location, and demographic diversity. Here is a breakdown of who qualifies. So, they highlight a chart here. It says must be 18 years or older, low to middle income owners, households under 30,000 for singles, pilot limited to selected provinces, example of Ontario and BC. Current benefits cannot be receiving equivalent federal assistance and includes Indigenous communities, newcomers, and disabled persons. So, the structure payment, it says the UBI pilot will run for 24 months with monthly tax-free payments ranging from $1,200 to $2,400 depending on household size and income. Payments will be issued directly to participants' bank accounts with no restrictions on employment or other income. Here's how the summary table, so it goes into detail. Here, a single adult can get $1,200 non-taxable for income that's under $30,000 a year. Couple, $2,000 if the joint income is less than $50,000, and families with children, $1,800 to $2,400. Amount varies by number of dependencies. So, as I said before, and we, in highlight of UBI, there's a lot of discussions. There's a lot of things that need to be handled when it comes to UBI. I think it's necessary to have these discussions. I think it's necessary. We should have had them a while back, but it's good that we're at least having these discussions now, given the fact that a lot of corporations, a lot of the billionaire class have already, since the dawning of AI, since they incorporated that into everyday life, that there's always been this fear of, well, if the auto industry, completely turns into automation, or if white collar work or blue collar work just dependent on robots, where does that leave us? Where does that leave working class people? Because obviously we need an income. We have to pay rent. We have to pay bills. We have to have some way of financial security to be able to afford the basic essentials. So there's a lot of good in this. And I know some people are looking at this already and saying, Well, aren't you forgetting a couple things? You know, this is the Canadian government. They say one thing, but they mean the other. That's where, uh, at first glance, you think that this is a good idea. But the Canadian government, they'll say something good, but when you look between the lines and what accompanies it, it's not always that great. So here, this is from the Government of Canada Parliament website. So this is the bill here, S206, an act to develop a national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. And currently, it is at its first reading. It's going to its second reading. So it's already on the table. There's already discussion about it. But here is what's kind of alerting to me. And this is from Wiretap Media. So they stated that the UK government has quietly acknowledged its involvement in global digital governance and digital ID programs led by the UN and the World Economic Forum. What Canadians need to know. So they showed this. This is from the foreign, what does it say? The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. This is from London, and it says, thank you for the email on May 27th asking for information under the Freedom of Information Act. So this guy, Lewis Brackpole, asked for freedom of information to get this document here. And it says, please provide any records, correspondence, or briefing notes from 2020 onward relating to the UK government involvement in pilot programs or initiatives led by the World Economic Forum or United Nations concerning digital governance, digital ID, or trust frameworks. If this exceeds the cost limit, please prioritize programs involving the DSIT or FCDO. That's digital currency. That's I forget the acronym there. I can confirm that the FCDO does not hold information relevant to your request. And then also highlighted underneath there, it says, for central government, the appropriate limit is set at $600. This represents the estimated cost of one or more persons spending three and a half working day periods in determining whether the department holds the information and locating, retrieving, and extracting it. So they're already setting this up in the UK, but here's what Canadians need to know. And this is kind of in relation to the UBI, because again, the Canadian government has this kind of trickery where they'll propose a bill, they'll glamorize it, they'll say like how great it is. And at first glance, you could say it's pretty impressive. You could say, at the start of Bill C-11, the Online Streaming Act, originally it was proposed to emphasize Canadian content. And as a content creator here in Canada, as supporting Canadian media, you think that's wonderful. You think that's great. But then you read between the lines, you know who's connected to this, and you read on into what this bill is incorporating, and it's far beyond what they propose to you. It has nothing to do with the exact mention of what they're proposing to you. And this is also incorporated into this UBI because they want to digitize the transfer of money for participants. So this is why this is such a big deal. But here is a video here. And it says, in collaboration with the fintech community, the Government of Canada has created the Made in Canada open banking system where they will introduce a digital ID. So this is an incorporation with the UBI project, that there's going to be a digital banking system that's going to regulate and monitor so that people that are getting this universal basic income have access to it through a government-run banking system. And watch this woman here trying to sell you that point.
If for anyone who read the advisory committee report, that was the title of it, a Made in Canada hybrid solution for open banking. There's certainly a lot of pent-up energy and frustration around the topic of open banking, but I am a glass half full person, so you asked about the factors for success, and that's what I'll focus on. So factors for success, I'll say one that may be a little bit controversial, because maybe people are really keen on the regulations coming in and the government writing the rules and us following them. The government writing the rules and us following them. One of the comments that is being made in consideration.
You just heard that. The government writing the rules and us following them. So that's what this open banking is. It's going to determine if people will have their access, even if they're guaranteed. Even if they are a recipient from the government, they give them the okay to get this UBI. It requires those people to sign up to this banking system regulated by the Canadian government, regulated by the same people that restricted bank accounts to those that participated in the Freedom Convoy, donated to the truckers. The same people are now waving around the idea of, hey, we'll give you a universal basic income so that you're able to pay your rent, you're able to put food on the table, you can afford electricity, the basic essentials, but we need you to sign off to this banking system that could shut your financial will like a light switch, that could shut off your finances in a heartbeat, regulated by the government. So there's always this catch when it comes to these proposals. It's never just, oh, we're giving out UBI because we feel bad that everything's going to be automated. Obviously, the economy's still going to grow if we're going to produce more with robotics, and that money can then be transferred down to the working class people that we displace through automation. It's never that case. It's never that case when it comes to the Canadian government, especially attached with the WEF. But here's the rest of it.
That OBIE is now applying is, instead of just regulations, move to more of a policy-driven framework and apply incentives. Policy-driven framework and apply incentives. So incentives can have...
So she's mentioning social credit scores. That's what all this is incorporating. That's what all this is incorporating. So I'm a supporter for UBI. I'm a supporter for UBI because I get the measure. I get and understand why it's necessary to have these conversations. Obviously, automation and AI is going to take off. There's no way to stop it. There's no way to stop technology from growing. That's just the unfortunate factor. And if technology does grow and more of these companies, more and more of the billionaires, you have Bill Gates that just came out recently saying that, 90% of the workforce is not needed because everything's going to be robotics. Everything's going to be AI programmed. You're not going to need white collar positions. You're not going to need receptionists anymore. You're not going to need, low skilled jobs. Even people that work at Tim Hortons or Burger King are not going to be necessary at some point because it's all going to be robotics. It's all going to be popped out to you by some sort of automated machine. So I'm a huge supporter for UBI. But the fact that this is coming from a heinous government that would, of course, incorporate a UBI program, something that is beneficial to people, try to push that towards a digital currency and digital ID, of course, there's a catch to this. Of course, they would never just do something from the goodness of their heart that they feel obligated to serve the needs of Canadians. There's always some sort of catch. There's always some sort of catch. Just like the Online Streaming Act, just like all the other acts that got passed from the government. Oh, we're doing this on the benefit of Canadians. Oh, we want to promote Canadian content. But there's a catch. We get to decide what's Canadian content. So someone like me, even though I'm presenting Canadian news from a Canadian studio, myself as a Canadian is not qualified to be Canadian content. Why? Because I'm controversial. I'm not approved to spread the Canadian message orchestrated by the government. So this is what's so dangerous about it.
A huge impact in driving innovation. And so a key factor for success, I think, in Canada is to learn from that, focus on a policy-based framework, and look at the incentives that would need to be in place to encourage innovation. I think the second factor for success, and you heard about it in the payments conversations, is collaboration. We have to collaborate. If you are a bank looking to get ready for open banking, you're going to view this as a compliance initiative. I think the third factor for success, and you heard about this throughout the payments conversations, is trust. How do we enable trust for all the key stakeholders that are involved, So if you're a bank,
So not trust for Canadians, not trust for working class people that are going to basically try to force people into this open banking system. We're not worried about their trust. We just need them to be compliant. We need them to shut up and go along with this like everything else. We need them to just be the sheep, to go into the butcher and get and deal with the dilemma there. But the trust comes from the shareholders. We got to make sure that the billionaire class feels trusting to our government that is pitching this idea of, oh, we're going to give people some money. What? Oh, hold on, but they're only going to get the money if they resort to a digital ID. Oh, okay, I feel so much better now. That trust, the public-private relationship trust, which sounds a bit like fascism, doesn't it? Like the whole definition of fascism is government oligarchs align themselves with the corporate estate. That sounds a bit fascist. That sounds like a technological feudalist fascist society. So this is what worries me when the Canadian government is pushing UBI. I like the idea of it, but know where it's coming from.
Want someone to have determined the accreditation, the liability rules, the dispute framework, because that's not something that you want to come up on your own. Otherwise, it's, as Hannah mentioned, there's going to be bilaterals, and those are all going to be different. So trust is key there. For fintech, you want to believe that this is going to be inclusive, open, fair, transparent, and so the standards have to be set and established. They have to be communicated, and they do have to be fair. And some of that comes from accreditation. And so if you can combine incentives, collaboration, and trust, I think those are three key ingredients and factors for success, because the ones that I haven't talked about, no one should argue. Because open banking, at its core, is about the consumer. It assumes that there is some fair accreditation framework. It assumes we're moving away from credential sharing and screen scraping to secure APIs. It assumes that a liability and a dispute framework has been established. So those are foundational, those are building blocks. I don't even have to talk about that. Let's add incentives, collaboration, and trust to the mix in Canada. And I think that's where we have an opportunity.
Ottawa has.
So that's why I wanted to show that in relation to the announcement of UBI. Because she just said right there, in order for us to distribute this UBI payment program, we're going to need the collaboration, the support, the trust from private-public entities, meaning the government and corporations, to align themselves to determine your financial stability. So this is what I mean. When the Canadian government proposes a bill or makes this measure to make it sound like it's inclusive or somehow supportive to Canadian nature, be very aware. Because what's behind the scenes, what's in between the lines, what they're not telling you is who's aligned with that measure to do the exact opposite. Bill C-11 was not to promote Canadian content. It was to transfer the power of who gets to decide what is considered Canadian content or not to the oligarchs, to the Canadian government that spread misinformation, that lied to you, that gaslight to you every single day. They get to decide what is acceptable for Canadians to watch. Even though for someone like me, as a Canadian bringing you Canadian news, they don't consider that Canadian content. Because the narrative doesn't fit. The narrative is controversial. It sounds too American to question the certain aspects of our government, the certain aspects of our parliamentary system that's so unbelievably corrupted. It sounds so American. You sound like a Trumper. But here, Here, the reason I'm showing you this is, again, do not be fooled by these measures. You may think that it's a good idea, and you think that, oh, finally, Canadian government's taking UBI seriously. Again, as someone that supports the UBI initiative, because I understand the importance of having these discussions when it comes to automation, when it comes to, the crumbling working class. Obviously, we have to come to some sort of situation. We need to come to some resolution to deal with this problem, to deal with the fact that the workforce is dying off, that the workforce is going to be overpowered by robotics, by AI technology. So obviously, you need to have this conversation. But this conversation is coming from the worst of the worst, the creme of the crop, that have brought disaster to working class Canadians. These are the people responsible for cutting off bank accounts for contributing to a peaceful protest. So if they had the capacity and ability to do that, why should I believe them that they're going to just give this UBI out to individuals at no expense? That there's no gimmick, no catch, no strings attached to this. Of course, there's a string attached to it because they want to shuffle people to a digital ID. And it's already being run in the UK. It's already being run in European nations. As Mark Carney stated, we want to be more European. Canadians want to be more European, according to Mark Carney, meaning that Mark Carney wants to side with that oligarchy, wants to side with the WF, not America, but wants to side with the WF horrendous oligarch that is going to push people, if they want to get this UBI initiative, they want to have a little financial stability in these crazy times, you have to surrender yourself to this absolute disastrous program of digital ID and digital complacency that's going to turn you into a digitized slave. That's the unfortunate part. That's what's so devastating about this. Hey, here at Kitz Corner, we want to thank you, our viewers and our subscribers that tune into Kitz Corner for the latest dives in trending news, political conspiracies, and the craziest of stories. However, being in this business isn't an easy job. Because we're independent, we can dive into stories that the mainstream outlets are afraid to do so. But unfortunately, that doesn't give us the luxury of big advertising or government subsidies. That's why we reach out to you. You can support Kitz Corner and get some cool new threads in the process. Say what? That's right, check out our merch store, where we have a big selection of t-shirts, mugs, stickers, sweaters, bags, and more. All with interesting designs too, like this True North Strong and Free. So if you want to show off your support, go to our website at kitzcorner.net. That's kitzcorner.net. And click the store link at the top of the screen. Or you can scan the QR code provided on screen to get instant access to our merch store. Your support makes a huge difference at what we do here. So why not wear your support too? So go to kitzcorner.net or scan the QR code on your screen to get to our one-of-a-kind Kitz Corner merchandise store. Thank you.